I didn't think getting told to move at a company dinner would be the thing that finally snapped something in me. I've been talked over, underpaid, forgotten on email chains, accidentally left off invites. That's kind of the job description when you're a temp. You're there, but you're not really there. People hand you tasks, not respect. You're a name on a badge that's going to disappear in a few months, so why bother learning it? Still, I wasn't prepared to have a grown man look straight at me in front of a full table of coworkers and say, "Find another table. Temps aren't allowed." This all happened 2 weeks ago. I'm still replaying the sound of his voice. My name's Eric. I'm 32, and if you looked at my LinkedIn, you'd think I'm allergic to stability. 3 different companies in 4 years, all of them through the same staffing agency, all of them good opportunities that turned into budget cuts as soon as I started unpacking my desk plant. I don't have kids, I don't have a mortgage, and until recently, I didn't have a backbone either. The current gig is at a mid-sized software company. Open office, kombucha on tap, posters about disruption on the walls, all that. Technically, I work in operations, which is a fancy way of saying I make sure other people's projects don't fall apart. I build spreadsheets, chase signatures, fix schedule clashes, and answer the kind of questions full-time employees don't want attached to their name. To be fair, it's not the worst place I've worked. Some people are decent. A few even bother to ask how I'm doing before they dump something on my desk. But there's a clear line between us and them, and I live squarely on the them side. The full-timers have key cards that don't flash red half the time. They get invited to strategy meetings and Friday happy hours. They talk about stock options and performance reviews. Temps like me get a different color badge and a reminder that we're contractors, as if we might forget and accidentally feel at home. The dinner invite showed up on a Wednesday afternoon. I was halfway through correcting a mess of a resource plan when the calendar notification popped up. Annual Client Appreciation Dinner. All team members. It was sent to the whole ops group, including me. Same time, same place, same dress code. No asterisk next to my name. No optional label. I stared at it for a second longer than necessary. At most companies, temps don't get invited to stuff like that. We cover phones while everyone else gets drunk on the company's dime. So yeah, I was surprised, and I'll admit it. I was stupidly happy about it too. One dinner, one night where I wouldn't be the temp, just another person at the table. My manager, Lisa, stuck her head over my monitor a few minutes later. "Hey, you saw the invite?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound casual. "You sure it wasn't just a blanket send?" She frowned. "You're on the team. Of course you're invited." That sentence sat in my chest a lot heavier than it probably should have. "Cool," I said. "Thanks." She smiled and vanished back into her email universe, and I stared at the plan on my screen without seeing a single cell. I started thinking about things like which shirt I could get away with calling nice, and whether anyone would notice if I wore the same shoes from the office. The rest of the week moved in slow motion. People talked about the dinner like it was the highlight of the quarter. The company had booked a private room at some upscale restaurant downtown, the kind with a website that doesn't list prices. There'd be a fixed menu, open bar, speeches from the VP, and maybe one of the clients if they were sober enough. "Big night," one of the analysts, Mark, said, leaning against my cubicle wall. "You going?" "Yeah," I replied. "Got the invite." "Good," he said. "You keep half our deadlines alive. You deserve a steak." It was the kind of small kindness that shouldn't mean much but did. Most people talked around me. Mark talked to me. Then there was Ryan. Every office has a Ryan. In ours, he's technically a senior account manager, but in reality, he's a loud guy with shiny shoes, an expensive watch, and a laugh you can hear through noise. Canceling headphones. Clients love him because he remembers their kids' names and tells stories that make him sound important. People on our side tolerate him because he brings in money and knows how to charm up, even if he punches down. He never said anything openly nasty to me before that night, but he had a way of making me feel like furniture. If he needed something, he would talk to Lisa while standing next to my desk, as if I couldn't hear him. If I answered a question in a meeting, he'd repeat my answer louder, slightly rephrased, and everyone would nod at his version. The night of the dinner, I got ready in my tiny studio apartment, like I was going on a first date with my own self-respect. I ironed a shirt I only wear to interviews. I dug out the one decent pair of dress shoes I own, the ones that squeak a little on hard floors. I checked the time 3 times, even though I'd already set 2 alarms. I took the bus downtown because paying for parking would have hurt more than I wanted to admit. The restaurant was one of those places with low lighting and tall windows, all dark wood and quiet conversations. I could see our company's name on a little sign outside a side entrance. Private event. My stomach did this nervous flip, half excitement, half, you don't really belong here. I ignored it and walked in. The private room was already buzzing. People from the office were clustered around high-top tables, drinks in hand, their office clothes upgraded by jewelry and better shoes. I saw Lisa talking to a client, smiling in that tight professional way. Mark caught my eye and lifted his glass in a small salute. "Eric," he called, "you made it." "Yeah," I said, stepping into the room, the floor immediately feeling too polished under my shoes. "Didn't want to miss the free food." He laughed. "That's the spirit." I headed toward the bar, weaving through small circles of conversation, catching snippets of talk about projects, weekend plans, and some new software they were rolling out next quarter. No one said anything about me being there. No one looked surprised. For a few minutes, I let myself relax. I ordered a club soda with lime because I didn't trust myself not to nurse a grudge if I added alcohol. The bartender slid it to me without comment. I took a sip and scanned the room. That's when I saw Ryan. He was holding court near the center of the room, of course, one hand on a client's shoulder, the other wrapped around a whiskey glass. His tie was loosened just enough to look intentional. He laughed at something, head thrown back, and a few people around him joined in like they were on cue. Our eyes met for a second. He gave me the kind of quick, polite nod you give a distant neighbor. Then his gaze slid past me like I'd been a flicker in the lights. Whatever, I told myself. I wasn't here for him. Eventually, someone from the restaurant staff rang a small bell and announced that dinner was ready. The long table in the center of the room had been set with white linens, candles, and more cutlery than I knew what to do with. Place cards lined the middle, little folded tents with names printed in a clean serif font. I didn't expect to have one, and I didn't. Temps don't usually show up on seating charts. Lisa waved me over. "Just sit anywhere that's open," she said. "It's informal." So I did what anyone would do. I looked for an empty chair by people I at least recognized. There was a space 2 seats down from Mark, across from one of the junior devs I'd helped last week. I started toward it, heart rate finally leveling out. I pulled the chair back, set my hand on the top of it, and that's when I heard his voice right behind me, casual and loud enough for the whole table to catch. "Hey man," Ryan said, "you might want to find another table." Temps aren't allowed. For a second I honestly thought he was joking. The way he smirked, the relaxed tilt of his chin, the casual cruelty in the phrasing, like he'd rehearsed it on the drive over. Conversations around us didn't stop completely, but they stuttered, like someone had flicked a dimmer switch. A few heads turned. A couple of people suddenly found their napkins very interesting. I kept my hand on the chair. "What?" I asked, not because I didn't hear him, but because I needed to buy myself one breath, 1 second to stop the heat rising in my face. Ryan shrugged. "This table's for full-time staff." His tone wasn't angry. It was worse. It was bored. Like I was a fly, he was gently encouraging toward a window. "I was told to sit anywhere," I said, glancing at Lisa. She opened her mouth. Too slow. Ryan cut in first. "Yeah, but we're trying to discuss a client rollout. It's not really contractor-friendly conversation." A small laugh escaped someone near him, a tight, uncomfortable one, the kind people make when they don't want to pick a side. I felt something pinch behind my ribs. Not pain exactly, but a quiet, sharp humiliation, the kind that sticks. I pushed the chair back into place and stepped away. Across the table, Mark's face tightened. He started to say something, but I gave a small shake of my head. I wasn't going to drag him into it. Not there. Not in front of clients. "It's fine," I said, even though it wasn't. "I'll sit somewhere else." And I walked, slowly, because speeding away would mean it got to me more than I wanted to show. But that wasn't the end of it. As I moved toward another open seat on the far side of the table, Ryan called out, "Thanks, man. Company dinners can get sensitive. Liability-wise." More laughter, this time louder. "Liability. As in me." I sat down alone at the corner, the one spot nobody had touched. A fork clinked too sharply against a plate near me. People settled in, but the air had changed. The whole room felt uneven now, as if someone had kicked a table leg and it hadn't stopped wobbling. Lisa eventually took her seat 2 chairs down, avoiding my eyes. Maybe guilt. Maybe discomfort. Maybe she just didn't want to challenge the golden boy in front of a client. I couldn't blame her for corporate self-preservation, but it still cracked something in me. Dinner started. Salads, bread, polite conversation. But it all sounded muffled, like I had a pane of glass between me and the rest of the room. Ryan dominated the table with anecdotes about a massive deal he'd personally secured. He made sure to talk loudly enough that even from my corner I could hear the highlights. At one point, someone asked, "Didn't Eric help with that scheduling nightmare?" I didn't look up, but I heard it, and I heard Ryan's response. "Kind of," he said lightly. "I mean, I rewrote most of what he sent. But yeah, he got the ball rolling. A lie, a stupid one, but said with confidence, which is all you need for people like him." My fork paused halfway to my mouth. That was the moment something inside me shifted, not snapped, not broke, shifted. A quiet slide from embarrassment to clarity, because it wasn't about a seat or a chair or a table. It was about the fact that he thought he could say anything about me, and I'd take it. As the servers cleared plates for the main course, Mark leaned toward me and whispered, "Ignore him. He's being an ass." I nodded, but my mind was already somewhere else, calculating, steadying, an email, a phone call, a name I hadn't thought about in months. Because here's the part Ryan didn't know. I wasn't just some drifting temp who couldn't keep a job. I used to work full-time, long hours, big responsibilities, until the company folded. The man who owned it was brilliant, intimidating, and a little terrifying. He left the industry afterward, but he still consulted for 2 or 3 high-level firms when he felt like it, and one of those firms was the parent company that owned this place. He told me once, "If you ever need something, call me. You helped me through hell. I owe you more than I'll ever admit out loud." I hadn't planned on using that, ever. But then I heard Ryan say, louder than necessary, "Look, the temp's fine. He's doing his little assignments. Let's focus on the real work." Little assignments? My jaw tightened. I pulled out my phone under the table, typed a message, paused for one long breath, and hit call. The line rang once, twice. He picked up on the 3rd ring. "Eric," he said, "didn't expect to hear from you." I looked up at Ryan, laughing, shining, unaware. "I need a favor," I whispered. A clink echoed across the table as someone raised a glass for a toast, but my chest was loud with something else entirely, because I didn't know it yet, but that call would cost them a lot more than a seat at a table, and the night was only just beginning. He didn't ask for context. He never did. "What do you need?" he said, voice low. The same calm tone he used when he dismantled entire negotiations without raising his volume. I kept my eyes on the table, on the flickering candles, on the empty plate in front of me. "I'm at a company dinner," I whispered. "The one your partners host. Something happened." A pause. Not impatience. Calculation. "Are you in trouble?" "No," I said. "Not yet. Where are you?" I told him the restaurant name. Another beat of silence, then, "Understood." That was all. No explanation, no reassurance. Just certainty. He hung up. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and forced my breathing to steady because the room was suddenly too bright, too loud, too small. And as the main course arrived, steak, perfectly seared, plates landing in front of full-time employees who would never taste the fear behind the silverware, I knew something had started moving far above Ryan's pay grade. I didn't know how fast it would hit. The VP of operations, a man who almost never attended these dinners, walked in 20 minutes later. He moved with urgency, scanning the room until his eyes landed on Lisa, then Ryan, then, unexpectedly, me. He went straight to Lisa first. "Can you step aside with me?" he said quietly. Her posture stiffened. She followed him to a corner, their voices hushed but strained. Heads lifted around the table. Forks paused midair. Even Ryan raised an eyebrow. Then the VP approached Ryan. "Ryan," he said in that same even tone, "I need you as well." Ryan laughed like he thought it was a joke. "Come on, man, I'm in the middle of—" "It's not optional." Something in the VP's voice, something clipped and cold, made the entire room still, the kind of silence that gathers right before a storm breaks. As they stepped toward the doorway, the VP glanced back at me again, and this time he gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Not friendly, not grateful. Acknowledgement. Across the table, Mark mouthed, "What's happening?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know, not exactly, but I felt the shift, felt the ground starting to tilt beneath all of us. The door closed behind them. Moments later, muffled voices leaked through the thin walls. Not words, tones, sharp, urgent, one deeper than the others, fast and surgical. I recognized it instantly. He wasn't calling. He had come in person. My chest tightened. I hadn't expected that. The table tried, badly, to resume conversation. Someone coughed. Someone else picked up a glass and immediately put it down again. The candles flickered like they felt the tension. The door opened. Ryan came out first. No swagger, no smile, no color in his face. He looked stunned, like someone had reached into his life and removed a piece from the center without warning. Lisa followed, eyes wide, pupils blown with the kind of fear only corporate bloodshed brings. Then the VP stepped out, followed by the man I'd called. The room changed temperature. My former boss, Mason, wasn't loud, wasn't tall, wasn't physically intimidating, but his presence rewired rooms. People straightened without knowing why. Conversations died mid-sentence. He was dressed casually, dark jacket, no tie, but somehow he carried more authority than the VP beside him. His eyes swept the table, once, briefly, before he turned to the VP. "Proceed," Mason said quietly. The VP cleared his throat. "We've conducted an immediate internal review." Immediate, meaning now, meaning in the last 20 minutes. "And effective tonight, Ryan Blake is placed on administrative leave pending further investigation." A ripple of shock raced through the room. Ryan's mouth opened. "Wait, hold on. This is insane. Administrative leave for what?" The VP didn't even look at him. "We'll discuss the specifics in the morning." "But I didn't do... This wasn't even... He's a temp," Ryan shouted, pointing at me like I was the problem. And those 3 words were the wrong ones to use in front of Mason. He stepped forward slightly. "Not threatening, just clarifying." "A contractor," Mason said, his voice quiet enough that everyone leaned in, "is still a human being. And in this company, treating people like they are disposable is a liability." The room froze, not from volume, from truth. Ryan stared at him, stunned. "Liability? Over a seat at a table?" Mason's expression didn't change. "No, over a pattern." Ryan blinked. "What pattern?" And this was the moment the floor truly dropped. Mason tilted his head at the VP. The VP nodded, took out a folder, and opened it. "We have multiple reports, documented, of your comments to contractors and junior staff. Dismissive, derogatory, unprofessional." "That's ridiculous," Ryan snapped. Who even reported that?" No one answered, because everyone knew. People don't speak up until they know someone powerful is listening, and someone powerful, very powerful, was standing right there. Ryan turned back to me, his eyes sharpened. "This was you," he breathed. "You did this." I didn't move. The truth was simple. I hadn't done anything but make one call. I hadn't asked for consequences. I hadn't demanded punishment. But something inside me wanted him to understand. "I didn't do anything to you," I said quietly. "You did something to yourself. I just refused to sit somewhere else." For a moment, no one breathed. Ryan opened his mouth again, but nothing came out. The VP gestured toward the hallway. "We need to finish this conversation privately." Ryan looked around the room as if someone would save him. No one did. He left stiffly, the VP behind him. Only Mason remained. He walked toward me, not fast, not dramatic, then stopped across the table, studying me with that familiar mix of amusement and respect. "You doing okay?" he asked, voice low enough that only 2 or 3 people heard. "I am now," I said. He nodded once. "Good." He turned to leave, and then paused, glancing over his shoulder. "You shouldn't sit alone," he added softly. "Find a proper seat." He left without waiting for a response. The room stayed silent for a long moment after the door closed. No one knew what the new rules were anymore. No one knew how to look at me now. Then Mark pushed his chair back. "Eric," he said, gesturing to the empty seat beside him, "come here." Not pity, not politeness. Recognition. I stood up, walked over, and sat down at the table that had turned me away less than an hour earlier. The room slowly resumed breathing, but under the surface something else was beginning to form. A shift, a rebalancing, a quiet reckoning. They thought the chaos was over. It wasn't. I thought that would be it. Ryan embarrassed, put on leave, the room shaken back into a weird kind of politeness. I'd go back to my corner of the building, finish out my contract, and maybe, if I was lucky, people would think twice before treating me like a folding chair. But the thing about quiet lines is that once you draw one, they don't just stop at the edge of the table. The next morning, the office felt different. You know that hum a place has? The mix of keyboards, phone calls, muted conversations, the clack of someone's heels on the tile. It was all still there, but the tone had shifted, like everyone was a half-step softer. People weren't avoiding me exactly, but they were watching. Lisa caught me before I even set my bag down. "Eric," she said, voice low, "the VP wants to see you at 10. My stomach pulled tight. "Am I in trouble?" She shook her head too quickly. "No, I don't think so. Just be honest." That's always the kind of advice people give when they're afraid. At 10, I sat in a glass-walled conference room with a too-cold air vent and a view of the parking lot. The VP came in with HR, which didn't help my pulse. Then Mason walked in, closed the door, and suddenly the glass felt bulletproof. "Morning, Eric," he said, taking the seat across from me like this was just another Tuesday. "Morning," I replied, hands folded so they wouldn't fidget. The VP cleared his throat. "We wanted to follow up about last night." HR opened a notebook. "This is not a disciplinary conversation," she said. "We're here to understand what happened, and more importantly, the environment that led to it." I told them. Not dramatically. Not like a speech. Just facts. How long I'd been contracting there. The comments that got brushed off as jokes. The way temps were treated like single-use cups. Useful, then invisible. I told them exactly what Ryan said at the table, word for word, and how he'd treated my work in meetings. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't soften it either. Mason listened without interrupting, eyes steady on my face. When I finished, HR asked a few clarifying questions, the kind that make you repeat things until even the room feels tired of the truth. I answered them all. Finally, the VP leaned back. "Why didn't you come to us earlier?" he asked. "Because I'm a temp," I said simply. I assumed my contract would end before anything changed, and I couldn't afford to be labeled a problem. It wasn't said with anger, just math. Something in his expression shifted. Mason spoke for the first time since I started. This isn't just about one dinner, he said. It's about leadership allowing two classes of people in the same building, those who count and those who don't. That's how you lose good talent before you even hire it. HR nodded slowly. There are other reports, she added quietly. You were not the only person he spoke to that way. That landed like a small, delayed thunderclap. It wasn't all on me. I wasn't imagining it. That was the first small piece of satisfaction, realizing it wasn't just my thin skin. It was a pattern everyone had been stepping around. We're taking action with Ryan, the VP said. You won't be asked to be part of that process, but I wanted you to hear directly that what happened to you was not acceptable, and it's not going to be treated like a joke. I nodded. Thank you. Mason glanced at HR and the VP. Can you give us a minute? He asked. They left without arguing, which told me more about his influence than anything else. He waited until the door clicked shut. You held that room together last night, he said. You could have made a scene. You didn't. I just wanted to eat dinner, I said. He smiled once. Quick. That's always how it starts. He folded his hands on the table. You free for a more permanent arrangement? I blinked. What do you mean? I mean, he said, tone as mild as if he were offering me coffee. I recommended you to this company when the parent firm asked if I knew anyone who could stabilize their operations. I didn't tell you because I wanted to see what you'd do on your own. You did exactly what I expected. Better, actually. My brain stuttered. You recommended me? He nodded. We're cleaning house. That includes people who think contractors are disposable. It also includes bringing in people who know how to do the actual work without theatrics. It took a second for the implication to settle. You're offering me a job? I asked. Full-time, he confirmed. Benefits, stock options, the same color badge as everyone else. Title would be Operations Coordinator, with a path to manager if things go the way I think they will. The VP is on board. HR's already drawing up the paperwork. Only question is whether you want it. I thought about the chair pulled away from me, the laughter, the way my hand had gripped the back of that seat. I thought about 3 companies that had died beneath my feet, and the way I'd gotten used to the idea that I'd never have anything stable again. Then I thought about the line I'd drawn in my own head. I will not beg for a place where I'm not respected. I want the job, I said, but not if it means pretending last night didn't happen. Not if temps are still treated like they can be kicked to another table any time it's convenient. Good, he said. I'd be worried if you were willing to forget. He stood. I'll let them handle the details. As he reached the door, he paused. One more thing, he said, glancing back. You didn't just call me to hurt him, did you? I shook my head. I called because I realized I'd rather leave than keep being quiet. If nothing changed, I was gone anyway. His eyes warmed just slightly. That, he said, is exactly the right reason. He left me there with my heart beating hard and steady for the first time in a long time. Ryan didn't come back to the office. Officially, the email said he had resigned to pursue other opportunities. Unofficially, everyone knew he'd been given a choice, shaped like a door. Some people looked sympathetic. Some didn't bother. A few, the ones who'd been on the receiving end of those jokes for years, just looked relieved. Over the next month, things changed. Not overnight, not magically, but they changed. HR rolled out mandatory training, the kind that usually feels like checkbox theater. This time it didn't. They brought in actual facilitators, made managers sit through sessions about contractor treatment, harassment, and quiet retaliation. Anonymous reporting actually got responses. Temps started getting invited to meetings that affected their work. Their badges stayed a different color, sure, but the invisible divide felt less like a wall, and more like a line you could step over without getting slapped. As for me, my new badge arrived in a small envelope on a Tuesday. Same logo, same name, different color. It shouldn't have mattered as much as it did. But when security handed it to me and deactivated the old one, I felt something unclench in my chest that had been tight for years. You're official now, the guard said, smiling. Guess we've got to be nice to you. You could try it with everyone, I replied. He laughed. Fair. My first paycheck with benefits hit my account 2 weeks later. I moved my plant into a slightly bigger cubicle. Lisa started looping me into planning meetings instead of just forwarding me the fallout. Mark started asking my opinion before accepting deadlines from sales. Nobody made a speech. There was no banner, no cake, no congratulations on surviving corporate nonsense card. But every time someone said, Eric, what do you think? Instead of, can you just send me that spreadsheet? It felt like a small, private victory. A couple of months after the dinner, we had another event. Smaller this time, no clients, just internal. Pizza in the cafeteria, a celebration for hitting a quarterly target. The operations team grabbed a long table near the windows. As people sat down, one of the newer hires hovered at the edge, tray in hand, eyes scanning for a spot. He had the wrong badge color. He had that same look I've felt 100 times, half hopeful, half ready to retreat. Hey, I called, sliding my chair an inch. We've got room here. His shoulders loosened. You sure? He asked. Yeah, I said. All team members, remember? He smiled and sat down. The conversation flowed around us. Projects, weekend plans, someone's dog doing something ridiculous. Nobody asked if he was allowed at the table. Nobody pointed out his contract status. At one point, he leaned toward me. I heard about what happened at that dinner, he said quietly, with Ryan. Rumors travel, I said. He nodded. Just wanted to say, thanks for not staying quiet. It's different here now. You can feel it. That was the real payoff. Not Ryan being gone, not my title, not the new badge. It was that sentence from someone who didn't even know me 6 months ago. After lunch, I went back to my desk, opened my email, and saw a message from Mason. No subject line, just one sentence. How's the table? I smiled. It fits, I wrote back, and I don't have to fight for the chair. He replied a minute later. Good. Remember, if someone tells you to move, they're just showing you where they don't deserve to sit. That was it. No grand advice, no life-changing quote. Just a reminder of the line I'd drawn on a night when someone thought I was too small to matter. People like to believe justice is loud, that it comes with slammed doors and shouted arguments and dramatic exits. Mine was quieter. One phone call, one decision, one sentence I refused to swallow. I still do the same work. I still build spreadsheets and chase signatures and fix schedule clashes. The difference is I do it from a place that doesn't ask me to disappear. I don't wait for invitations anymore. I don't measure my worth in chairs other people let me occupy. If I'm in a room, it's because I belong there. If someone doesn't see that, that's their blind spot, not my reflection. At the company dinner this year, there'll be another long table, more candles, another round of speeches. When I sit down, I won't be wondering if I'm allowed. And if anyone ever tries to tell me, or anyone else, to find another table, I know exactly what I'll say and exactly who I'll call. The difference now is simple. I don't need the call to prove anything. The call just reminds them of what I already know. I've got my seat.